My wife complained I'm too bored being your stable partner, so I created the drama she wanted, liquidated all assets and started over in another country during her girl's trip. Some people spend their whole lives chasing what looks exciting from a distance, never realizing that stability isn't boring, it's just honest. I learned that lesson the hard way, but at least I learned it before wasting another decade. I met Elena at the Emerald Gala, one of those charity auctions where Seattle's tech elite pretend to care about local arts while actually networking for their next funding round. I was 31, working 80-hour weeks as an investment banker specializing in international mergers at Klein & Associates, one of those prestigious firms where your business card actually opens doors. I'd spent 6 years methodically building my reputation, analyzing market patterns until my eyes burned, learning Mandarin and Japanese to facilitate Asian acquisitions. The auction was at the Four Seasons, all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. I was there because my managing partner insisted senior associates needed to maintain visibility in the philanthropic community, which meant writing checks and making small talk with people who might eventually need our services. That's where I spotted Elena working the room like she'd choreographed every interaction. She was 27, coordinating the entire event while pursuing her graduate degree in hospitality management at the University of Washington. What struck me wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she was, dark hair swept back in this effortless style that probably took an hour, wearing a dress that looked both professional and magnetic. It was how she moved through the crowd with natural authority, remembering everyone's name, making introductions that seemed spontaneous but were clearly strategic. I watched her connect a venture capitalist with a startup founder, facilitate a conversation between a real estate developer and a city council member, all while ensuring the silent auction ran smoothly. She noticed me observing and walked over with a smile that suggested she knew exactly what I'd been thinking. "You're with Klein & Associates," she said, not quite a question. "Graham Hendricks. I've heard the partners mention your name. You handled the Sakura Medical acquisition last quarter." I was genuinely impressed she'd done that homework. "And you're making this whole event look effortless, which means you've probably been planning it for 6 months. 8 months, actually," she laughed. "But that's the goal, right? Make it look spontaneous while controlling every variable." We talked for 20 minutes that felt like 5, discovering we both appreciated the architecture of well-executed plans, the satisfaction of details aligning perfectly. She understood that my 80-hour weeks weren't about being a workaholic, they were about mastering a craft. I appreciated that her graduate degree and event coordination weren't separate paths but complementary skills she was deliberately cultivating. Before the evening ended, I had her number and a coffee date scheduled for Saturday. Our first 2 years together felt like watching two complementary systems integrate seamlessly. Elena finished her master's degree while expanding her network through the hospitality industry, landing increasingly prestigious events that connected her with Seattle's emerging tech aristocracy. I made partner track at Klein, leading the team that structured a major cross-border pharmaceutical merger. We became one of those couples who appeared effortlessly successful, attending exclusive yacht club functions, spending weekends at boutique resorts in the San Juan Islands, hosting intimate dinner parties where Elena's talent for creating connections became increasingly valuable to my career. She had this remarkable ability to remember genuine details about people, their children's activities, their professional aspirations, making everyone feel important. I found myself getting introduced to startup founders before their companies went public, venture capitalists who later brought acquisition opportunities to Klein, tech executives who needed financial restructuring. Elena's networking wasn't shallow social climbing, it was strategic relationship building. I started investing in the lifestyle that came with our combined success, acquiring Swiss watches I'd always admired, attending private art exhibitions at galleries in Pioneer Square, joining Elena at invitation-only events where we mingled with people who'd built genuine empires. She introduced me to a personal stylist who updated my wardrobe, taught me which restaurants actually mattered, showed me how to navigate Seattle's particular brand of wealth where ostentation was gauche but strategic visibility was essential. Our partnership became something larger than just a relationship. It was a mutual investment in building the kind of life we'd both worked relentlessly to access. After 4 years together, We acquired a waterfront estate on Lake Washington that represented everything we'd been building toward. The property was stunning, almost 7,000 square feet of glass-walled living spaces that seemed to float above the water, with a private dock and terraces designed for hosting the kind of gatherings that mattered in Seattle's tech ecosystem. I negotiated aggressively, ultimately securing it for $400,000 below asking. Elena transformed it into something extraordinary, creating spaces that felt both intimate and impressive, perfect for the industry mixer events she'd started organizing. Elena completed her master's degree that spring and landed a coveted role as Director of Brand Experiences for Palladian International, a hotel chain expanding into the Pacific Northwest luxury market. Her salary jumped to $92,000, but more importantly, she gained access to an entirely new network of hospitality executives and lifestyle brand managers. I was promoted to Senior Vice President at Klein, overseeing our Asian Market Acquisitions division, which came with substantial equity. We were living the exact life we'd planned, the kind of success that felt earned through strategic decisions and relentless execution. Then something shifted. Elena's role at Palladian assigned her to collaborate with several social media personality brands, connecting influencers with luxury properties for sponsored content. She started spending hours consuming their content, these digital nomads promoting location independence and escaping the corporate matrix, people who filmed themselves working from Balinese rice terraces while preaching about rejecting traditional careers. Her consumption became almost obsessive, scrolling through feeds during dinner, watching YouTube videos about geo-arbitrage, when we were supposedly watching movies together, suddenly critical of aspects of our life she'd previously celebrated. "Don't you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" she asked one evening while we were preparing for a dinner party. "Like we've built this beautiful prison for ourselves?" I looked up from the wine I was decanting, surprised. "A prison with a lake view and a boat dock? That's a pretty generous definition." "You know what I mean, Graham. Wake up, go to work, come home, host the same people, have the same conversations about market conditions. It's so predictable. So cookie-cutter executive lifestyle." Predictable isn't the same as meaningless. We built this intentionally. This is what success looks like. She didn't respond, just returned to her phone, scrolling through some influencer's story about spontaneous adventure being the antidote to suburban despair. I tried addressing her growing discontent through experience, surprising her with a 2-week trip to Fiji, private island resort, over-water bungalows, the kind of escape that cost more than most people's cars. We went snorkeling in crystal-clear lagoons, had dinners prepared by private chefs on the beach, spent afternoons in complete isolation from Seattle's professional obligations. Elena posted beautiful photos, wrote captions about paradise and gratitude, but I could see the restlessness still present. "This is incredible," she said one evening as we watched the sunset. "But it's still just another luxury experience we're consuming. We fly home in 4 days and return to the exact same existence. What's wrong with our existence? We've worked incredibly hard to build it. Nothing's wrong with it. It's just so structured, so planned. Every vacation scheduled 6 months in advance, every weekend allocated. When did we become so rigid?" I felt frustration building because this was the foundation of everything we'd accomplished. Structure isn't rigidity. It's how successful people operate. Random spontaneity is for people who don't have responsibilities. Or maybe it's for people who are actually living instead of just optimizing. Back in Seattle, Elena's critique of our gilded cage existence intensified. She started referring to our carefully curated life as the soul-crushing routine, dismissing the dinner parties we hosted as performative networking theater and our weekend plans as scheduled spontaneity, which she claimed perfectly captured our problem. When I'd mention upcoming events, yacht club regattas we'd attended annually, charity functions where we'd made valuable connections, she'd respond with visible disdain. "We need more unpredictability," she insisted during what was supposed to be a romantic dinner at Canlis, the restaurant where I'd first told her I loved her. "More adventures that aren't blocked out on our shared calendars 6 weeks in advance. Adventures require planning. You can't just stumble into meaningful experiences." "Why not?" Some of the best moments in life happen when you're not controlling every variable. I wanted to argue that the best moments in life happen when you've created the conditions for them through thoughtful preparation, but I could see this conversation was heading somewhere unproductive. Elena began insisting we needed more spontaneity and unpredictable adventures to feel truly alive, dismissing our life as meaningless despite having actively participated in building every aspect of it. Then Elena discovered Phoenix. Not his real name, obviously, but the brand identity he'd cultivated for his personal transformation business that targeted dissatisfied corporate achievers seeking to reclaim their wild essence and demolish limiting structures. Phoenix ran exclusive liberation boot camps at remote mountain lodges in the Cascades, immersive weekend experiences that cost $3,000 and promised to help participants excavate their authentic power buried beneath societal conditioning. Elena attended her first boot camp in early September, driving 3 hours to some retreat center near Mount Rainier for what she described as a consciousness intensive. She returned Sunday night with this strange euphoric energy, talking in circles about breakthrough moments and paradigm shifts without actually explaining what had happened. It was incredible, Graham. Phoenix helped me see how much I've been suppressing my true desires to maintain this facade of corporate success. I was loading the dishwasher, half listening because this sounded like every self-help seminar I'd ever heard described. What facade? You love your work. You've told me countless times how much you enjoy building brand experiences. I thought I loved it, but Phoenix showed me I was just addicted to external validation, seeking approval through professional accomplishments instead of connecting with my genuine purpose. Over the next 2 months, Elena attended 4 more boot camps, each one seemingly intensifying her immersion in Phoenix's philosophy. She started speaking in his signature phrases about vibrational frequency optimization and awakening your primal decision-making power, concepts that sounded profound but meant absolutely nothing when I tried to understand them concretely. Her communication style shifted dramatically, responding to practical questions about our schedule or finances with abstract statements about releasing dependency on safety illusions. When I expressed concern about the amount of time and money she was investing, she accused me of having a scarcity mindset and resisting transformation because it threatens your control paradigm. The boot camps were just the beginning. Phoenix offered private coaching sessions, virtual intensives, monthly masterminds, and apparently an entire ecosystem of supplementary programs. Elena purchased an extensive collection of artisanal wellness products he recommended, crystals and essential oil blends and ceremonial cacao that allegedly facilitated energetic recalibration. She established a rigorous sunrise ritual practice that required her to wake at 5:30 for meditation, journaling, and something called somatic release work that involved making strange sounds in our home gym for 45 minutes. Our bedroom started filling with books Phoenix assigned, all heavily highlighted and annotated with Elena's increasingly illegible handwriting. She joined his online community, spending hours analyzing her awakening journey with other participants who seemed equally absorbed in this language of transformation. Then came the real investment. Phoenix offered an elite 12-month program called the Sovereign Self-Transformation Academy, limited to 25 participants who demonstrated genuine commitment to radical personal evolution. The tuition was $22,000. Elena showed me the promotional materials one evening in November, her eyes bright with anticipation. This is exactly what I need, Graham. The academy goes so much deeper than the boot camps, addressing core wounds and authentic power reclamation. I stared at the glossy brochure filled with vague promises about quantum consciousness shifts and embodying your highest timeline. $22,000 for what appeared to be a year of weekend retreats and video calls with a guy who'd probably changed his name legally to Phoenix. Elena, this is a significant amount of money for something that sounds extremely abstract. What specifically will you learn? What concrete skills or outcomes? It's not about skills, Graham. It's about transformation. Becoming who I'm meant to be instead of who society conditioned me to be. Everything can be quantified. That's how you determine if something has value. What's the ROI on $22,000? She looked at me with something close to pity. This is exactly why I need this program. You've reduced everything to ROI calculations. Some things transcend financial analysis. Some things are about soul alignment. The argument escalated, but eventually I acquiesced because refusing seemed like it would create more conflict than the money was worth. Elena enrolled in the academy in December, and her involvement with Phoenix's teachings became essentially all-consuming. When I proposed our traditional New Year's trip to Zermatt, the Swiss resort where we'd celebrated every year since we'd gotten together, Elena rejected it outright. I can't miss the Academy's New Year intensive. Phoenix designed it specifically to help us release old patterns and set intentions aligned with our authentic frequency. Going to Switzerland would be perpetuating the exact empty materialistic cycles I'm trying to transcend. We've gone to Zermatt every year. It's our tradition. Exactly. It's a tradition based on habit and comfort, not genuine desire. I need to prioritize my consciousness evolution work right now. Phoenix says the first 6 months are critical for establishing new neural pathways. So we didn't go to Zermatt. Elena spent New Year's Eve at some retreat center doing breathwork ceremonies while I stayed home alone, drinking expensive wine and wondering how we'd arrived at this point. I started noticing other changes beyond philosophical language and wellness products. She was sharing enigmatic posts on social media about shedding relationships that no longer serve your highest timeline and honoring your truth even when it disappoints others, statements that seemed directed at someone specific. She took midnight video calls with Phoenix that she conducted secretly in our home theater room, closing the door and speaking in hushed tones I could hear through the walls but couldn't decipher. When I'd ask about these calls, she'd deflect with statements about confidential coaching boundaries and sacred container agreements. I checked our credit card statements and discovered she'd been purchasing things beyond the academy tuition. Expensive lingerie from boutiques she'd never shopped at before. New workout clothes that seemed designed more for appearance than function. A professional photography session that cost $1,800. The images posted to her Instagram with captions about stepping into your power and embodying your divine feminine essence. The photos were beautiful but uncomfortably intimate, Elena in flowing fabrics looking directly at the camera with an expression that suggested she was performing for someone specific. Phoenix commented on every single post with fire emojis and statements about her radiant transformation and luminous authenticity. By February, Elena had essentially moved the academy into our waterfront estate. She initiated daily virtual coaching intensives with Phoenix under the pretense of breakthrough acceleration sessions, converting our meditation room into what she called an energetic healing sanctuary. She spent thousands on metaphysical equipment Phoenix prescribed, singing bowls that cost $400 each, a collection of tuning forks for sound healing, crystals arranged in geometric patterns that allegedly optimized spatial frequency, and an infrared sauna pod that cost $9,000 because Phoenix claimed traditional saunas disrupted cellular intelligence. The sanctuary became her exclusive domain, off limits to me because my presence apparently contaminated the energetic field. She'd spend hours in there during Phoenix's virtual sessions, and I'd hear fragments through the door, his voice giving instructions about breathwork and embodiment practices, her responses that sounded uncomfortably intimate for what was supposedly professional coaching. She became emotionally distant in ways that went beyond physical space. When I'd try to initiate intimacy, she'd deflect with speeches about how genuine connection requires perfectly calibrated soul frequencies before physical intimacy can be authentic. Phoenix says physical intimacy without energetic alignment creates karmic entanglement, she explained one night when I'd attempted to kiss her. I need to establish my sovereign frequency before I can authentically merge with another person's field. We've been together 4 years. We've merged plenty. That was unconscious merging. I'm learning to be intentional about my energetic exchanges. Phoenix is teaching me to honor my boundaries. In March, I discovered something that made the entire situation crystallize uncomfortably. Elena had left her laptop open in the kitchen, and I saw an email exchange with Phoenix that wasn't about coaching. She'd been sending him detailed photographs of our waterfront estate, floor plans, information about our financial situation, specifics about our relationship dynamics that should have been private. The emails weren't framed as therapeutic disclosure, they were strategic briefings. I need to understand your complete environment to facilitate transformation, one of his emails read. The photographs help me attune to the energetic signatures you're navigating. And understanding Graham's resistance patterns allows me to guide you through his control mechanisms more effectively. His control mechanisms. I was apparently the obstacle to Elena's enlightenment. I confronted her that evening, showing her the email exchange I'd photographed. You've been sharing details about our private life with Phoenix? Our finances, our home, our relationship? She didn't look remotely apologetic. He's my transformation strategist, Graham. He needs comprehensive information to support my evolution. This is completely normal in intensive coaching relationships. Normal coaching doesn't involve sending photographs of our bedroom and detailed descriptions of our intimate life. You don't understand the depth of work we're doing. Phoenix needs to see the complete picture of what I'm healing from. Your resistance to this proves exactly why I need his guidance. I want basic privacy. There's a difference between therapeutic disclosure and strategic intelligence gathering. This is exactly the kind of controlling language Phoenix warned me about. You're threatened by my transformation because it exposes your need to dominate our relationship. The gaslighting was remarkable. I'd somehow become the villain for expecting reasonable boundaries. Elena systematically withdrew from our established social circle throughout the spring, claiming these interactions contaminated her energetic field and prevented her from maintaining the frequency she was cultivating. She stopped attending the dinner parties we'd hosted for years, declined invitations from friends, became dismissive of anyone who questioned her involvement with Phoenix's program. They're operating from limited consciousness, she'd say. Their resistance to my transformation reflects their own stagnation. Phoenix says I need to protect my energy from people who can't honor my journey. She relocated to our guest suite in April, claiming she needed to preserve her spiritual coherence and that sharing a bedroom with me was energetically destabilizing. The guest suite became her private apartment within our home, and I'd see her coming and going at strange hours, always on video calls with Phoenix or other academy participants. Our infrequent shared dinners became exercises in patience, Elena absorbed in constant messaging on her phone, responding to my attempts at conversation with distracted half-answers or redirecting everything back to Phoenix's teachings. Phoenix says relationships are mirrors that reflect your unhealed wounds, she'd say when I'd express frustration. Your discomfort with my transformation is showing you something about your own limitations. When I attempted a serious conversation about whether we even had a marriage anymore, Elena accused me of resisting transformation and feeling intimidated by her awakening. You're threatened because I'm becoming powerful, she said, her voice taking on Phoenix's cadence. You preferred me when I was smaller, when I sought your approval, when I organized my life around your schedule. Now that I'm claiming my sovereignty, you can't handle it. I'm concerned because you've abandoned our relationship for a self-help program and developed what looks like an emotional affair with your transformation coach. An emotional affair? She laughed, bitter and cold. This is sacred work, Graham. Phoenix is facilitating my consciousness evolution. The fact that you sexualize our coaching relationship reveals your own insecurity and limited understanding of transformation. I stared at her, recognizing that I was talking to someone who'd been systematically conditioned to reject reality in favor of Phoenix's carefully constructed narrative. Our 5th anniversary arrived in late May, and I decided to make one final attempt at salvaging what we'd built together. I spent 3 months orchestrating an elegant celebration at our waterfront estate, the kind of thoughtful gesture that had once defined our relationship. I invited Elena's siblings, her parents who'd flown in from Portland, and several of my key business partners who'd watched our relationship develop from the beginning. I coordinated with the catering team we'd used for years, the ones who knew exactly how Elena liked everything prepared. I commissioned a custom jewelry piece from the designer who'd created her engagement ring, a pendant engraved with the coordinates of the yacht club where I'd proposed and the date we'd bought our estate. I spent weeks composing an emotional tribute about building our future empire together, about the partnership we'd cultivated, about my vision for the next 5 years of growth and success. The plan was to hold a vow renewal ceremony, something I'd been secretly arranging for half a year, working with an officiant who'd incorporate elements that honored both our journey and our future. I'd even designed custom invitations that quoted things Elena had said during our early years about wanting to build something meaningful together. The evening of our anniversary, I had the estate perfectly arranged, soft lighting reflecting off the lake, a string quartet playing in the background, champagne and past hors d'oeuvres circulating among the 40 guests who'd arrived to celebrate with us. Elena's sister kept asking where she was, and I kept checking my phone for updates, assuring everyone she'd be there soon. She finally arrived 2 hours late, walking through the front door still wearing the flowing linen outfit she'd worn to one of Phoenix's day-long identity reconstruction workshops. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged like she'd been crying, and she looked genuinely shocked to find our home filled with people. "What is this?" she asked, her voice loud enough that conversation stopped. "Graham, what did you do?" I walked over to her, trying to keep my voice calm and welcoming despite the growing pit in my stomach. "It's our anniversary. I wanted to celebrate 5 years together with the people who matter to us. You ambushed me. You knew I had the workshop today. You knew Phoenix was facilitating critical breakthrough work, and you scheduled this anyway to sabotage my transformation." The room had gone completely silent, everyone watching this confrontation unfold. Her parents looked mortified, her sister was staring at her phone like she wished she could disappear, and my colleagues were exchanging uncomfortable glances. "I've been planning this for months, Elena. I sent you calendar invitations. We talked about our anniversary weeks ago. You talked at me about it. I told you I needed to prioritize my academy work right now, that anniversaries are just arbitrary social constructs designed to reinforce relationship dependence. And you ignored me, just like you ignore everything that doesn't fit your rigid control structure." She turned to address the assembled guests directly, her voice taking on that performative quality she developed through Phoenix's coaching. "This is exactly what I've been healing from. This need to trap me in obsolete commitment structures, to force me to perform the role of grateful partner when I'm actually suffocating under the weight of expectations that don't honor my authentic self." I felt my face burning, humiliation washing over me as I watched her publicly dismantle everything I'd carefully constructed. "Elena, maybe we should talk about this privately." "No, Graham. I'm done with private conversations where you manipulate me into feeling guilty for prioritizing my growth. Everyone here needs to understand what's really happening. You're trying to imprison me in this facade of domestic success because you're terrified of who I'm becoming." Her mother stood up, clearly distressed. "Elena, honey, Graham organized this beautiful evening because he loves you. He organized this evening to control me, to demonstrate ownership in front of witnesses, to pressure me into recommitting to a relationship structure that no longer serves my highest evolution. Phoenix warned me this would happen, that Graham would escalate his control tactics as I got closer to authentic liberation. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and I could see the pity in people's eyes as they watched my anniversary celebration transform into a public humiliation. Then Elena dropped the real bomb, the announcement that made everything else feel like preliminary damage. "I'm seriously considering Phoenix's proposal to participate in his exclusive 4-month ego dissolution expedition through Southeast Asia. We're leaving in 3 weeks, and I need to be free to fully commit to that experience without being guilted about abandoning some artificial relationship timeline." For months. Southeast Asia. With Phoenix. The room erupted in awkward murmurs, people suddenly finding reasons to refill their drinks or step outside for air. Elena's sister looked like she wanted to physically remove Elena from the premises, and her father had his head in his hands. "You're planning to spend 4 months traveling with your transformation coach," I said, my voice remarkably steady considering I felt like I was watching a building collapse in slow motion. "And you're announcing this at our anniversary party." "I'm announcing this because you forced a confrontation by staging this manipulative celebration. This is on you, Graham. All of this is your resistance to my evolution manifesting as control and coercion." She grabbed her purse from the entry table and headed back toward the door, pausing to deliver one final statement. Phoenix says that true transformation requires complete dissolution of the false self. I can't do that work while I'm trapped in this relationship structure that keeps reinforcing my old patterns. I need space, real space, to discover who I actually am beyond your expectations and this suffocating life we've built. Then she left, walking out of our anniversary party, out of our home, leaving me standing there in front of 40 people who'd come to celebrate a marriage that had apparently dissolved without me fully realizing it. The silence that followed her departure was excruciating. Elena's mother approached me with tears in her eyes, apologizing for her daughter's behavior. Her sister stayed to help coordinate the awkward dissolution of the party, ushering people out while I stood there trying to process what had just happened. My managing partner from Klein pulled me aside before leaving. "Graham, I don't know what to say. That was incredibly difficult to witness. Yeah. It was difficult to experience. If you need time off, we can arrange that. This clearly requires your attention." I thanked him and spent the next hour mechanically storing the custom renewal rings I'd commissioned, putting away the jewelry pendant that Elena would never see, and listening to Elena's sister explain that her sister had been acting crazy for months, but the family hadn't realized how severe it had gotten. The catering team packed up the untouched food with sympathetic expressions, and I found myself sitting alone on our dock at midnight, looking at the dark water and wondering how I'd so completely misread the situation. Elena appeared the next morning around 10, walking into our kitchen where I was drinking coffee and staring at the lake. She looked tired but oddly energized, like she'd spent the night processing her dramatic exit and had arrived at some clarity. "We need to talk about last night," she said, pouring herself water. "I handled that poorly, and I acknowledge my delivery was harsh. But the core message remains valid." I set down my coffee cup. The core message being that you want to spend 4 months in Southeast Asia with Phoenix. Yes. I need to join his ego dissolution expedition to excavate my authentic identity beyond the prison of our enmeshed relationship. This is essential work, Graham. I can't become who I'm meant to be while I'm still entangled in our patterns. "So you're leaving?" "I'm taking necessary space for transformation. Phoenix has been preparing me for this journey for months. It's 6 other Academy participants, all doing deep consciousness work together through Thailand, Bali, Vietnam. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I felt something cold and clear settle in my chest, analytical detachment replacing emotion. And what happens to us during these 4 months? That's what I want to discuss. I need you to understand this isn't about abandoning our marriage. It's about me doing necessary internal work so I can return as a more evolved partner. Phoenix says the expedition will help me transcend my dependency patterns and access my optimal self-expression, which will ultimately make our relationship stronger. You want me to wait here while you spend 4 months traveling with your transformation coach, and somehow that's going to improve our marriage? Yes, exactly. You're finally understanding. I need you to hold space for my journey, to support my evolution with unconditional acceptance. When I return, I'll be able to show up in our relationship from genuine authenticity instead of conditioned obligation. She said this with complete sincerity, genuinely believing I would accommodate her disappearing for a third of a year. She expected our waterfront estate and luxurious lifestyle to function as her guaranteed safety net, always available for her return. "What if I don't want to hold space for your journey?" I asked. She looked surprised. "What do you mean? What if I'm not interested in being your fallback option while you explore your authentic identity? What if I decide that authentic self-discovery requires complete independence without guaranteed outcomes?" "Graham, you're being deliberately obtuse. This is about my growth, not about us ending. I'm asking you to support my transformation. I'm telling you that if you leave for 4 months with Phoenix, you're choosing to leave our marriage. There's no holding space, no unconditional acceptance, no guaranteed return to our life together." Her expression shifted from surprise to panic. "You're threatening me." This is exactly the controlling behavior Phoenix warned me about. "I'm not threatening you. I'm clarifying reality. You can go on your expedition, but you'll be going as a single woman, not as someone on temporary leave from a marriage. So you're saying if I prioritize my growth, you'll punish me by ending our relationship? I'm saying authentic growth requires accepting consequences of your choices. You want independence and transformation? Great. Have it completely. No safety net, no fallback position, no husband maintaining your lifestyle while you find yourself in Bali. She stared at me, clearly having expected me to be heartbroken and pleading. This is an impossible choice. You're making me choose between my evolution and our marriage. No, you already chose. You chose months ago when you started prioritizing Phoenix over our partnership. I'm just declining to pretend otherwise. But I love you, she said, and for the first time in months, I heard actual emotion instead of therapeutic language. I don't want to lose what we've built. Then don't go. Stay here, commit to our actual marriage, and find a therapist who doesn't charge $22,000. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the internal calculation happening. She wanted both things, the adventure and excitement of Phoenix's expedition and the security of our life together. She wanted to demolish limiting structures while keeping the benefits those structures provided. I need this experience, she finally said. Phoenix says this expedition is critical for my development, that if I miss this window I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I also don't want to lose you. You can't have both, Elena. Make your choice. Her face hardened, the vulnerability disappearing behind transformation rhetoric. Fine. If you're forcing me to choose, then I choose my growth. I choose authentic evolution over safe domesticity. Phoenix was right, you're too threatened by my power to support my journey. Good luck with your expedition, I said, standing up and walking toward my office. Graham's, can't we talk about this more? Maybe work out some arrangement where I go but we stay connected. I paused. You want to renegotiate terms where you get your Asian adventure but return to our unaltered circumstances afterward. That's not happening. You made your choice. Now live with it. I spent the next week in calculated motion. While Elena packed and posted excited Instagram stories about stepping into transformative unknown territory, I was making very different preparations. I contacted our attorney and instructed him to initiate dissolution proceedings, drafting papers that would be filed the day after Elena's departure. I reached out to my managing partner at Klein about an opportunity we'd been discussing casually, establishing our European division headquarters in Barcelona. The office had been theoretical, a potential expansion we might pursue eventually. I made it immediate, informing him I wanted to lead the Mediterranean market operations personally, relocating to Spain to build the division from the ground up. I started systematically organizing our shared assets, documenting everything, preparing for the cleanest possible separation. I wasn't angry. I was just done. Elena left on a Thursday morning, a car service picking her up at 6 for her flight to Bangkok where she'd meet Phoenix and the other expedition participants. She tried one more time to extract some commitment from me. I'll be back in 4 months, she said, standing in our entryway with her oversized backpack. I hope we can talk then, really talk about building something better together. Have a safe trip, I replied, not promising anything. She hugged me and I felt nothing. Then she was gone, and I could finally start executing my actual plan. Within 2 months, I'd successfully dismantled our entire Seattle existence with systematic precision I usually reserved for corporate acquisitions. The waterfront estate sold in 3 weeks to a tech executive relocating from San Francisco, and I negotiated aggressively to close quickly, accepting slightly below asking price in exchange for a 30-day escrow that let me exit before Elena's scheduled return. I liquidated our combined investment portfolio, distributed assets according to our prenuptial agreement, and ensured every financial thread connecting us was cleanly severed. The dissolution papers were filed, served to Elena's parents since she'd left no forwarding address beyond vague references to Phoenix's expedition itinerary. My attorney handled everything with efficient discretion, and within 8 weeks our marriage was legally dissolving whether Elena participated or not. I accepted the Barcelona position officially, and Klein moved quickly to establish me there, providing relocation support that made the international transition remarkably smooth. I found a renovated loft apartment in the Gothic Quarter, 3 bedrooms with original exposed brick walls, tall windows overlooking narrow medieval streets, and a rooftop terrace where I could see the Mediterranean in the distance. The space cost a fraction of our Seattle mortgage and felt authentically lived in rather than showroom perfect. I purchased minimal furniture, contemporary pieces that fit the historic architecture, and established a home office with views of the old cathedral. The contrast to our carefully curated waterfront estate was dramatic and strangely liberating. I systematically eliminated my online presence during this transition, deleting Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, every platform where Elena or her transformation community might track my location or activities. I terminated my Seattle phone number and acquired a new international plan with a Spanish number that nobody from my previous life possessed. I wanted absolute disconnection from everything that had defined the past 5 years, creating a clean break that would allow me to rebuild without constantly looking backward. The work itself was engaging in ways I hadn't experienced in years, building Klein's European operations from essentially nothing, establishing relationships with Mediterranean investment firms, learning the nuances of Spanish and Italian business culture that differed significantly from Seattle's tech ecosystem. I was working long hours again, but it felt purposeful rather than obligatory, driven by genuine interest in building something new rather than maintaining existing structures. Barcelona revealed itself slowly, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the discovery process. Weekend mornings exploring the Boqueria market, evenings walking along Barceloneta Beach, discovering small restaurants in Elborn where I became a regular despite my limited Spanish. I joined a business networking group for international professionals, met people building careers across Europe, formed friendships based on current interests rather than years of shared history. For the first time since meeting Elena, I was experiencing life as fundamentally mine, shaped by my preferences and curiosities rather than our combined social strategy. Elena returned to Seattle in early October, for months after her departure, and discovered the estate sold, our accounts separated, and me completely disappeared. According to my cousin David, who still lived in Seattle and whom I'd asked to keep me minimally informed, Elena experienced something approaching a breakdown when she realized the magnitude of what had happened. She tried accessing our shared bank accounts first, discovering they'd been divided and her portion transferred to a new account in her name alone. Then she'd driven to the estate, finding new owners who had no idea who she was. She'd called my Seattle number repeatedly, reaching disconnected messages. She tried emailing, texting, even messaging through old social media accounts, all of which bounced back as inactive. David said she showed up at his apartment 3 days after returning, looking devastated and demanding to know where I'd gone. She kept saying she'd made a mistake. David told me during our call that the expedition had fallen apart, that Phoenix had been running the same program with multiple groups simultaneously, essentially collecting money from vulnerable people while stringing them along with transformation promises. She realized halfway through that she'd destroyed her real life for a fantasy, and she came back ready to rebuild things with you. And she found nothing, I said, feeling distant satisfaction that didn't quite qualify as revenge, more like natural consequences finally manifesting. She found nothing. She's staying with her parents right now. Graham, she's really struggling. She asked me to tell you she needs to talk to you, that she's completely transformed, prepared to fully commit to the marriage. I'm sure she is. Now that Phoenix's illusion collapsed and she has nowhere else to go. Elena began what David described as an increasingly frantic location campaign, engaging an international tracking service to find me, systematically reaching out to my former colleagues at Klein's Seattle office, contacting old university connections, even calling my parents in Ohio to ask if they knew where I'd relocated. She created new social media accounts to circumvent my blocking, sending messages through mutual acquaintances, leaving voicemails for David begging him to facilitate communication. The desperation in her approach was remarkable. The same woman who dismissed our marriage as an obsolete commitment structure now desperately trying to reconstruct what she'd voluntarily demolished. She wants you to know she's completely changed, David relayed during one of our periodic calls. That Phoenix was a manipulative fraud who exploited her vulnerability, that she sees clearly now how she destroyed something real for something fake, that she's in therapy working through what happened. Therapy that doesn't cost $22,000, I hope. She's broke, actually. Spent most of her savings on the expedition and the academy. Lost her job at Palladian while she was gone. She's working retail now, living with her parents, trying to rebuild her life from basically nothing. I felt sympathy for that situation, genuine sympathy for someone who'd made catastrophic choices and was experiencing natural consequences, but I didn't feel responsibility for rescuing her from those consequences. She'd chosen transformation and independence, and she'd received both, just not in the configuration she'd anticipated. My cousin eventually told her, against my preferences but probably inevitably, that I'd relocated internationally for work but couldn't provide specific details about my location. That information seemed to break something in her, the realization that I hadn't just moved across town or taken a temporary assignment, but had fundamentally exited the country and our shared existence. Meanwhile, I was genuinely building a life in Barcelona that bore no resemblance to what Elena and I had constructed together. I'd integrated into the expatriate community, formed friendships with other international professionals navigating life abroad, started seriously studying Spanish through immersive classes rather than language apps. I joined a sailing club at Port Vell, spent weekends exploring Catalonian coastal towns, discovered a passion for photography I'd never pursued in Seattle because our schedule was always too structured for spontaneous hobbies. The Mediterranean lifestyle suited me in unexpected ways, the slower pace of evenings, the emphasis on experience over optimization, the genuine warmth of relationships formed through shared interest rather than strategic networking. I met interesting people building fascinating careers, artists and entrepreneurs and academics who'd chosen Barcelona for its culture rather than its economic opportunities. For the first time in years, possibly ever, I was experiencing life as something to be lived rather than strategically managed. David called in late November with an update that Elena had apparently discovered through an old Klein colleague that I was somewhere in Europe, and she'd become fixated on the idea that if she could just talk to me directly, she could explain everything and convince me to give her another chance. She's convinced that you're making a mistake, David said. That you threw away something real because you were hurt and angry, and that if you'd just listened to her explanation about how Phoenix manipulated her, you'd understand. I'm not hurt or angry. I'm just done. There's a difference. I told her that. She doesn't believe it. She thinks you're protecting yourself from being vulnerable again. The assumption that my peace was actually concealed pain was almost amusing.